The British government isn't just totalitarian, censorious and bullying, determined to silence inconvenient truth and opinions it doesn't want to hear, deploying the police and the judiciary to that effect. It's also making the country of Britain look ridiculous. Let's talk about the truth first. Specifically, let's wonder why the truth is suppressed rigidly only until such times as it becomes impossible to deny any longer. How often will this exercise in futility be repeated? How many more times will too many people remain silent in the face of state lies until the truth becomes too obvious to ignore? And the truth becomes too obvious every time, sooner or later. Then we must endure the enervating spectacle of watching the previously silent, if not wholly compliant, about turn in real time while trying to pretend they knew the truth all along. At least the time lag between the big lies and the revelation of the truth is shortening from years to months until now, when lies seem to trip over their own feet from one day to the next. For years, literally 4 years, I had questions about the COVID jabs. I started out only frankly amazed they'd been whipped up so quickly, since I knew it normally took years, a decade maybe, to conjure such products into being. Where had they come from? By what miracle? I wasn't sure why, but I knew from the get-go that I didn't want them anywhere near me or mine. Take them if you want, I thought, but I don't. I didn't start out thinking the jabs would kill people. Surely not. Then as time went on, I grew increasingly suspicious about them and said so on GBNews, a tactic that put me under attack from across the board. Because for years it was career suicide to say such things on live television, to the extent that only a couple of us did, while almost everyone else kept their heads down and looked the other way, even as the excess deaths tally rose and the jabs were revealed as neither safe nor effective. In the past few weeks, however, it's been deemed safe to speak out about so many things, and by now everyone's at it, secure in the knowledge it's a zero-risk strategy. I had questions years ago about other things, notably the war in Ukraine. 5 minutes online in 2022 made plain the United States led a blatant coup in that country in 2014, a regime change that led to a murderous civil war that provoked Putin to step in with a view to saving the lives of ethnic Russians in the east of the country. I asked questions about all of that and got into more bother. C'est la vie. Donald Trump's been saying for months, if not years, that he could and would stop the war in Ukraine overnight. Single phone call. Time will tell, but already the tectonic plates of geopolitics are sure to move. And here in Britain, we have a Labour government, successors to a Tory government that pledged to send billions to Ukraine forever, committed to the same. The EU and Britain will be left to limp on alone in the face of a Russia in the ascendant, economically and militarily. Chancellor Scholz just told the German people they can't have an election because there's not enough paper for the necessary ballots. And Boris Johnson, the NATO bag carrier who scuttled into Ukraine to scupper a peace deal in 2022, who later proudly hosted the Azov Brigade, actual Nazis, that Johnson, said this week that British troops would have to be deployed to that charnel house. Not content with helping send hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians to their deaths, Johnson calls for British blood to flow too. There he was at the cenotaph as well, alongside the rest of the ghouls, Tony Blair included, besmirching a ceremony that has at its heart the promise and the pledge to see an end to war, not the continuation of war forever, war for profit and nothing more. The horror show / clown show is relentless and all-consuming. For years I've been saying the so-called climate crisis is a hoax, driving net zero and Agenda 2030 and the Pact for the Future and other hoaxes besides. Hoaxes that will end lives, immiserate lives, and enrich more of those that are always enriched by the get-rich-quick schemes provided by one government after another. I've had questions about central bank digital currencies and digital IDs and the rest of the bars of the digital cage. All the while that was going on, countless people would stop me in the street to say they had their own questions, especially about COVID and the jabs. Worst band name ever. They were frightened by how many people they knew who'd dropped dead with heart attacks, strokes and blood clots. But they had no one to turn to, certainly not their GPs or their MPs. All of this happened because the truth was suppressed from very top down, suppressed until the truth came out, as the truth always does, given time. Last week, something of note occurred, of course. Donald J. Trump won the race to be the next president of the United States of America. Love him or loathe him, see him as the saviour of the world or the devil incarnate, it's nonetheless undeniable that a cat has been set among pigeons. And among other things, the return of Donald Trump makes the British government of Keir Starmer and his Labour loonies look not just like totalitarian goons, but also ridiculously out of step with the country we're told is our most important ally, with whom we enjoy a special relationship. And so, by extension, our ridiculous government makes the whole country look ridiculous too. Just for starters, we had the cringe-making spectacle of the likes of Foreign Secretary David Lammy having to congratulate Donald Trump and claim to look forward to working with him off the back of notorious social media posts published when Trump was president first time around, in which Lammy dismissed him as a, quote, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, a dangerous clown and a racist KKK and Nazi sympathiser. Last week, Ed Miliband, Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, was crowing about Labour government plans to cut emissions by 81%, quote, to protect future generations, deliver jobs and drive economic growth. Just more of the lengthy suicide note Miliband and co have been writing for Britain and the British. The return of Trump signals, among much else, a radical change of direction for American energy policy. President-elect Donald Trump has already vowed to terminate the Green New Scam. That will be such an honour, he said, the greatest scam in the history of any country. Trump has promised American energy dominance based entirely on fossil fuels, more oil and gas drilling and an end to offshore wind projects, an end of what he has called the lunacy of subsidies for electric cars, as well as wholesale dismantling of environmental and climate rules. If fulfilled, they will leave Britain limping forlornly alongside those Europeans benighted by EU determination to rely on windmills and solar panels. Germany, without the Nord Stream pipeline, allegedly blown up on American orders, has been bleeding to death economically ever since, taking much of the EU down with it. Maybe a lack of paper in a Britain similarly starved of supplies of reliable, cheap energy will mean paper shortages too, and so no more elections here either. Trump has announced that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will lead his health department, the same RFK Jr. who champs at the bit to take down Big Pharma, which he has described as a criminal cartel that knowingly unleashes dangerous drugs on the public, comfortable in the knowledge that the profits made along the way will more than cover any fines applied for wrongdoing.
But your vice presidential pick wants to recall the Moderna vaccine. That's the one I got.
She's not going to...
Well, do you agree with that? Recall it.
I think I think those vaccines we need to have, again, true double-blind placebo-controlled trials on that. There's 25% of Americans who believe that they know somebody who was killed by a COVID vaccine.
Killed?
Killed. 25% of Americans, 52% of Americans believe that the vaccines are causing injuries, including death. 52%. If you look at the clinical trial studies, the actual studies that were done, that were released of the Pfizer vaccine, Moderna has not released it. If you look at the Pfizer vaccine, there were 22,000 people in the placebo group, 22,000 people who got the actual vaccine. And the people who got the vaccine had a 23% higher death rate from all causes at the end of that study.
But that could not be the disease itself?
No, well...
Because we know that...
If it is, then the vaccine doesn't work, does it?
Well, it's certainly... Well, no, that's not... Not true at all. And I'm somebody who did not want the vaccine and didn't think I should have been made to get it. But it does work. I think it all.
Wait a minute.
Work in the sense that if you were many people who would have died because they were not in good health. It killed mostly the obese and the very elderly. Okay, those people should.
Are we talking about
those people are alive today, I think, because of the vaccine. I think that's the truth. Does it also have complications? Yes. I mean, anecdotally, I have not heard about 1 out of 4 people dying, but I know a lot of people who've had issues. Yes, but they could have had worse issues if they got the disease. That's the thing. Medicine is always. So I just am for, let's make it a case-by-case basis. Certainly.
Well, I agree with that, too. I believe that people want a vaccine, that they should be able to get it. I'm not anti-vaccine. What I say is that...
Well, people think you are.
Well, I know, but that's because I'm called that because it's a way of silencing me. But I have said for 17 years, I'm not anti-vaccine. I just want good science. I want people should be able to make informed choices. I am against vaccine mandates.
Why can't...
Kennedy has also highlighted the madness of how since 1986 it's been illegal for anyone in the US to sue vaccine producers. No matter the harm done, no matter what data is covered up. We must wait and see what actually happens next in the US. But here in Britain, we're pledged to a £1 billion deal with US vaccine manufacturer Moderna. It was Rishi Sunak's Tory government that signed on the dotted line, but the deal stands so that yet more so-called vaccines, experimental gene therapies really, built using mRNA technology will be developed here and then churned out in dizzying quantities. Moderna is one of the big pharma companies in RFK Jr.'s sights. The so-called vaccines made using mRNA technology are among those he wants, let's say, seriously investigated. And here we are in Britain jumping into bed with them so that a handful of the usual suspects can trouser more profit. Here's the thing then. As if the lies weren't bad enough, the lies that ruined lives, ended lives, tore up the fabric of society, as if the turning upside down and inside out of our world before wasn't bad enough. Now, on account of the odd squad operating out of number 10 Downing Street, the whole country looks more and more like a clown show. And not a fun clown show, but the sort that's the stuff of nightmares. Change for the better, issuing from the US, any change for the better, would surely be grounds for celebration.